We'll go ahead and get started. I'm Molly McGurr. I'm the Events and Programs Manager for Traverse Connect. And we wanted to bring these webinars to you today so you can ask any and all questions that you might have. If there's anything that comes up at all throughout any point of discussion, please feel free to ask us questions. It's what we're here for. We want to hear your concerns. We want to hear what's going on in the, in the background, what's making you nervous. This is a time to ask those questions. So we do have a chat function located at the bottom of your screen. Please feel free to use that to ask any and all questions that you might have, and I'll be sure that we get those answered today. If we're not able to answer them during this forum, we'll definitely follow up with you afterwards with an email to get those answered. So on that note, I would like to turn it over to Brenda, and I also just want to quickly mention that this will be recorded. So we will have this posted within 24 hours if there's anything you would like to rewatch again. So on that, Brenda, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thanks for being with us here today.
Thank you, Molly. Hello, everyone. I am Brenda McLellan. I am the Director of Investor Relations at Traverse Connect, and we appreciate all of you joining us for the call today. So I'm going to introduce you to both of our presenters today, Meegan Holland and Amy Drumm, and we'll start with Meegan. Meegan is Vice President of Communications and Marketing for Michigan Retailers Association. Her responsibilities include member engagement and oversight of the association's branding and marketing efforts. Meegan came to the association in June of 2017 from the state of Michigan, where she worked at the Secretary of State's and government offices, and most recently the Michigan Veterans Affairs Agency as a senior policy advisor. Previously, she was a journalist for many years, most recently with statewide editor in Lansing for MLive Media Group. In the early 2000s, she co-managed a Lansing concert venue art gallery for 8 years, which ignited her passion for placemaking and other issues affecting small businesses. A graduate of Kalamazoo College, she serves on the first East Lansing Arts Commission, the Capital Region Community Foundation Board, and Lansing Area Economic Partnership for Placemaking Committee. And Amy Drumm is the Vice President of Government Affairs for Michigan Retailers Association. Her responsibilities include day-to-day activity in the state capitol, as well as analysis and monitoring of legislation and public policy. She serves as liaison to retail industry government affairs professionals and organizations and oversees the MRA Political Action Committee. In 2018, she was nationally recognized by the Food Marketing Institute for her extraordinary leadership and work on Michigan's ban on local excise taxes and fees and food and beverages, the country's first ever such law. Amy joined MRA as legislative coordinator in 2012 and was promoted to manager of government affairs in 2013 and director in 2015. A graduate of University of Michigan, she previously was legislative director for then state rep Sharon Tyler. So Amy and Meegan, we appreciate you taking the time to speak with our Northern Michigan retail businesses, and I'll let you take it from here, Amy.
Thank you so much for the invitation to join all of you this morning. We've obviously talked a lot with our retail members, and we're excited to talk with all of you and share with you what we've been working on in terms of what reopening looks like and what safeguards we've proposed to the governor and the administration on getting you guys back and getting your doors back open. And I think it's important to recognize that we know this is a really hard time for everyone, especially for retail. We were excited that we now have retail to go as an option. We think that should have been allowed from the beginning, but I know that that is really difficult if you don't have an online store, and I'm guessing that many of you don't have that capability yet, or much capability in that front. So I want to recognize that while we are not there where we want to be yet, we are headed in the right direction. And I think there are lots of things that we have been doing to try to help, and that the administration is listening to really carefully in terms of what does reopening retail look like and what kinds of safeguards and reality in terms of new practices is everyone going to be asked to put in place in order to be open. And it's important that we talk about not just the health and safety of your customers and people who are coming in to feel comfortable to shop, but also of your employees. And we know that there are a lot of changes that are coming on that front. You've likely heard of the health screening requirements from local county health departments. I know that the Northern Michigan region has a number of those in place as well as across the whole state. And there are now screening requirements through some of the governor's stay-home orders for employers, certain types of employers, at least at this point, for food retailers and restaurants. So those things are going to be important, as well as the sanitary changes of all of the new cleaning requirements, all of the new social distancing requirements of putting markers in your stores if you have stores or places where people may be gathering at your checkout lanes, or implementing some kind of capacity limits. And none of these things are things that we have encountered before in retail. And so this is all new, and the amount of compromise and change that retailers have dealt with in a very short time span has been really mind-blowing. And I know that this is going to be a big change for all of you and all of our members across the board. And so I don't want to diminish that. I know that this is going to be hard. It's going to be different. And I think it's just important that we work through this the best we can. We realize that these are truly safeguards that the state feels are important, that health officials feel are important, and that hopefully we can all recognize are important to keep everybody safe as they're coming in and doing their shopping. And reopening is such an important thing. We know that in order for you guys to stay in business and to support your community, and for those dollars to support the state and economic activity, which is so critical to drive Michigan forward and your local economy forward, you guys need to be open. And so we've been trying to figure out the best way to get you to that point. And so I just want to recap really briefly. We had sent, through the Michigan Retailers Association, we sent a letter to the governor's office about 2 weeks ago now, talking about a couple different phases to reopen retail. And the governor likes to use the term waves, so I'm going to try and switch my terminology to thinking in waves now instead of phases. But we really kind of identified 4 main waves here. And the first one is the one that we're essentially in right now, which is this retail to go, which is curbside pickup, home delivery, mail order delivery phase. The next one would be allowing a limited number of folks in your stores. We're hoping we get there soon, when the state will allow small groups of individuals to gather. That's when we think we would hit that phase, and allowing small numbers of people into smaller stores. And we have made the point with the administration that smaller stores equal smaller risk. So while you may be going, I know that a lot of people are doing home projects and they're going to hardware stores to get all of the materials for that. And you see a lot of people at those stores. You see a lot of people at grocery stores. Even with the limited capacity that they've put in place, your smaller Main Street type stores have a much smaller footprint and many fewer people that can be in there on a normal basis. So we think that they should be seriously considering reopening smaller stores more quickly than some of these larger stores that you would see otherwise. So we're hopeful that will be the next phase, or wave rather, and that the kinds of things that we proposed with consultation from our members, both large and small, of what you would need to do, and that would be really implementing a lot of things you're seeing now in some of the current stay-home orders. So things like markers on the floor for social distancing, allowing a number of cleaning practices, so putting hand sanitizer, if it's available, out for customers and for your employees to use, making sure that your employees are washing their hands frequently and disinfecting commonly touched spaces, so your checkout counters, your credit card terminals, all of those things, door handles, and then figuring out ways that you would handle merchandise that may be frequently touched. I know that Meegan will talk a little bit about things like this, but we've encouraged a lot of folks that if you're going to the store, only touch those things that you intend to actually buy. And that's going to be harder. And I think, other types of retail stores, like a clothing store or a gift store, you're going to want to see those things up close, and that's going to be difficult. I apologize. I have a dog at home, and he just saw a squirrel he was excited about. Hopefully that will stop here. But those are the types of things that we're expecting you're going to see a lot more of Oh, never fails.
Just give him the mic for a minute.
Okay, we're going to try to keep going here. But so, like I said, you're going to see a lot of changes and things that you're going to be asked to do in order to reopen your doors. And we asked our members what they thought they could handle. And we do feel that a lot of the things that we proposed are reasonable and allowing you guys to reopen your doors quickly. And so I want to move on. The third phase is kind of relaxing a lot of the pieces in the second wave. So allowing you to peel back that number of the capacity limits, having more people in the store at a time, relaxing some of the social distancing, relaxing some of the very frequent cleanings, all of those things will be changing. And then in the fourth wave, we really would be getting back to what would be kind of the reality going forward of, are we still going to have any kind of mitigation efforts? Potentially, but they're not going to be a real restriction on the type of business that you're doing in terms of the number of people coming in or cleaning efforts beyond what would be normal. So we're hopeful we can get there soon, but we don't want to be there, too soon to put anybody in jeopardy. And there are things that we need to think through in terms of what you do with returns as those come in. We talked about maybe you put those on kind of a hold shelf and you wait for those to be sit for a couple hours or maybe a day before you put them back out on the floor. We don't have science to back that decision yet, and I think we're going to have to wait and see what the health experts say, but it's something that we think needs to be considered. We know a lot of folks have stopped accepting returns temporarily because of concerns around that. So with that, I'll turn it over to Meegan and try to calm my dog down, but thanks for being gracious as we're dealing with that.
Hi, everybody. Let me just tell you a little bit about Michigan retailers. It's somewhat of a misnomer because we actually represent a wide range of businesses, not just retail, because we serve a lot of businesses with our credit card processing and our workers' comp insurance. But our mission, obviously, as Amy said, is to advocate for retail in the state legislature and governor's office. And then we also have a shop local program called Buy Nearby. And in fact, I know Buy Nearby Guy, our mascot, was in the Cherry Festival parade last year. So you may have seen him. Lately, I have been talking to retailers a lot about the logistics of reopening. And I'm doing several webinars in the next couple of weeks on this. And the first thing I say to retailers is, you are not opening what you closed in March, you're opening a whole new business model. And if retailers learned anything in the last several weeks, I would say it's two things. One is that relationships are everything. Relationships with your landlord, your banker, your vendors, your employees, and of course your customers. If you didn't have those going into this pandemic, you're probably struggling right now. It probably means you weren't able to renegotiate your rent, or you didn't get the Paycheck Protection Program loan. Those relationships are absolutely crucial. And the second thing is, absolutely, you have to be on the web in order to do online sales. Again, if you weren't on the web before this, you better get on there before COVID rears its ugly head again next fall or winter, like they're predicting. Hopefully not as bad as this time around. But online sales have been crucial to retailers' model. So 4 things to focus on for retailers. I say their store, their employees, their vendors, and their customers. I'm going to throw out a lot of tips here. Amy will know better the dictates of what the governor might be coming up with for reopening. Hopefully these will show you how you can finesse it. So the store, you may need to reconfigure it. You may already have wide aisles, in which case you're lucky, but a lot of cute boutiques have very narrow aisles where customers often have to even squeeze to get by each other. So if you can't widen your aisles or take out a few pieces of furniture to widen them, you are going to need those floor decals to wend people through your store one way, bring them back around by your cash register, and get them out the store. That's going to be very helpful in social distancing. You also, Amy mentioned limiting people. I would suggest you have a staffer at the door greeting them in a very friendly manner with hand sanitizer to squirt in their hands. And you'll probably need other hand sanitizing stations throughout the store. And you'll have to have your employees just do a nonstop wipe down regimen around the store as well. You may need sneeze guards. It may be a dictate, it may not. But if it isn't a dictate by the governor, you'll just have to decide whether it makes sense for your store or not. I know some of the clothing boutique owners I've talked to, they say it just doesn't make sense for me. I'm already all over the customer helping them fit their clothes. You may not be doing that quite as much now, but they just said by the time they get to the cash register, a sneeze guard probably doesn't make any sense. Fitting rooms, you may have to reduce them because you're constantly going to have to be wiping them down after every customer. So are you going to want to have as many fitting rooms? And then you may want to consider, at least at first, by appointment only. That will help you figure out whether the new layout of your store is working or if you have the right signage. And you may want to keep those by appointment only hours for your vulnerable customers anyway. You'll also want to reduce your hours to allow time for all that extra cleaning. You're still going to be paying employees to help you clean, but you won't be open. So you'll want reduced hours for that. And by the way, all that cleaning is going to be exhausting to your staff at first, at least, just to get them into the routine of it. I would suggest no grand reopening. Nobody is going to want to be in a packed open house right now. So think small, intimate gatherings where you can craft really meaningful connections with your customers. And also think maybe outdoor areas that you have access to, like a beautiful garden or an alley or, you know, even a sidewalk, parking lot, where you can do some retail selling outdoors. People are going to feel safer outdoors. And finally, signage. It's just going to be crucial to your new model. And it's not just to let your customers know what you're doing to keep them safe, but also to let your customers know what your expectations are of them. And before you can do that signage, you're going to have to make some tough decisions on what to signal. For example, if the governor doesn't require it eventually, you may still want to require face masks. And how are you going to deal with those belligerent customers who just insist they will not put a face mask on? One of the best responses I've heard is, I'm sorry, we require face masks because I want to protect my employees and my customers, but I would be more than happy to serve you curbside. And of course, that means you need to be set up for curbside delivery, and you probably you may already be doing that. And then the other one is, do you want to do volunteer temperature checks of customers as they enter? Some stores are requiring that. And do you want to allow children? Menards is not allowing children 16 and under right now, even if accompanied by a parent. And then do you want to allow returns? That's a difficult one. And if you do, how are you going to clean them? As Amy said, we don't know the science yet. I've heard a lot of clothing boutique owners say that they plan to steam clothes and put them back on the rack, or they may quarantine them for a day and then steam them and put them back on the rack. I've heard UV may be a possibility, but we just don't have the science behind that yet. Finally, contactless credit card processing is just going to be crucial. People don't want to touch anything, especially a credit card machine that may have been touched by a lot of other people. I'm going to brag a bit about MRA here. We did $1.4 billion in credit card processing last year, and we have all the technology that Square does. The main difference is that if you need customer support, we have a real person on the other end of the phone, rather than just sending you online to figure it out for yourself. So, okay, enough of a plug for MRA. Next thing is employees. Yes, you need to be concerned about their health. It may be a dictate to take their temperature before they enter your workplace. And what we recommend is that you assign each employee a number. And if you feel you need to document whether their temperature is normal or not, Do not put down their name, put down their number, and just say whether they passed or failed. Don't write down the exact temperature because you don't want to violate any HIPAA or ADA laws. And what do you do if the temperature is elevated? You can take it again a bit later because if it's just slightly elevated, it may just be an anomaly. But if it is definitely elevated, you'll need to send them home, and I wouldn't let them back until they get a doctor's note. Or if your health system is really stressed up there, you may want to just say you've got to quarantine for 2 weeks after your temperature returns to normal before you can return to work. So the other question is, where are you going to procure masks for your employees? You need to start thinking about that. Masks for employees are required right now. You at least need to show a good faith effort so law enforcement won't crack down on you. The Attorney General has said that she knows it's difficult to find masks. So that's something to think about. And then you should also stagger your employee shifts. In other words, as one shift leaves, they've got to leave first before the next shift comes in, so you don't have any cross-pollination at all. And you'll also want to cross-train your employees to make sure that if an employee is exposed or does have symptoms and they need to take time off of work, you have another employee who can slide right in and do their tasks. The third thing is vendors, really easy. If you can do contactless signatures to accept merchandise, great. And if you can, I would accept deliveries outside your store, have them leave them outside the door. You go out, you bring them in, but if that's not possible, just make sure they're wearing a mask when they enter your store. And finally, customers. The main thing with that is you need to regain their trust. So hopefully you've stayed in contact with them during this whole time by email or social media, Facebook Live videos. Maybe you've even called your best customers. You want to go overboard with those first customers who come in your store because they will be the early adopters of shopping, and we are going to love those people. So go overboard without being overbearing. It may mean that you deliver packages to the trunk of their car, or you put in a little thank you message in their bag. And then signage is going to be your friend again. Be transparent with them and let them know that you're concerned about their safety. Here's what you're doing about it. And just be really visible about wiping down surfaces. That's going to be heartening for customers to see. So those are just some of the tips. I'd love to give the full PowerPoint to a group of retailers who you think might benefit from it. Just let me know, and thank you so much. If you have any questions, Amy and I are here to answer them.
Perfect. Thank you both so much. And again, if you have any questions that came up throughout this, please feel free to throw them in the chat. You can set it to everyone, or if you don't want everyone to see your question, you can definitely message it directly to me. But we do have a few that came in. So the first question would be, what recommendations do you have for updating websites and social media pages to more effectively communicate with the customers?
You know, this is one area where I refer people to the Small Business Development Center for online help. In Detroit, they're doing a great thing, and I'm encouraging other regional small business development centers to do it. They're actually sponsoring, the city is sponsoring a workshop for their retailers on how to make their online sites more sales friendly. It is a tough thing to do, especially for small retailers, and it's expensive to do. So we're hoping that there will be a lot more free workshops or very inexpensive workshops to help retailers navigate this. I wish I had a better answer for you on that.
The next question is, how did Governor Whitmer's 5/15 date impact retail?
So the latest stay-home order that we're currently under allows for the retail to go. So it allows you to do curbside or home delivery or mail order delivery of retail products, which previously, the way that we were reading it and hearing from the governor's office, was not allowed. Now I know that some people were doing that, and if your local law enforcement wasn't enforcing it, then you were lucky. That was good. But now it is crystal clear that you are able to do that with certain safeguards in place. You want to have the contact lists or as limited contact as possible, have people pay over the phone or online, Don't have people sign something, put it in their trunk directly if you can, or leave it out on the curbside and you kind of let them know that, okay, it's out in front of the door and you can come pick it up. But it really is the first wave that we talked about a little bit earlier of what is allowed. And we're hoping the second wave will be coming soon. We know that the governor's office is evaluating things carefully and they're doing so. So the 5/15 date isn't necessarily a hard date. It's just through when we're extended right now. They have extended other closures of bars and restaurants through May 28th right now. So I think we're going to be under some version of a stay-home order for a while. And they're going to start to reopen things slowly and more slowly. And our hope is the next phase or next wave will be reopening a small, limited capacity number of folks into your stores with those various cleaning and mitigation efforts in place. And we don't know exactly when that's going to come. We're hopeful it will be in the next couple weeks here, maybe around May 15th, maybe before, or it may even be after. But like I said, we're doing our best to advocate for something to reopen soon. And we're hopeful that those small stores equal smaller risk, and that will really get through to the administration as they start reopening things, and you guys will be able to open your doors more quickly than maybe some of those larger stores out there.
Yeah, and I guess the follow-up to that question is there anticipated date for soft opening, and how much notice are they hoping to get?
That's a great question. So we have talked with the administration about this idea of notice. When the last stay-home order was revised 2 weeks ago now, we didn't get really any notice. It was immediate, which was good. We wanted, the opportunity, but it did take folks a couple of days to get ready. And so that's why we are really encouraging you to, as Meegan said, start thinking about those employee screening requirements, start thinking about face covering, start thinking about hand sanitizer and sanitizing wipes and all those things that you're going to need when you do reopen, and how you're going to mark your aisles, if you're going to do it one way, if you're going to put some kind of tape down on the floor just to have the 6 feet social distancing at the front of the store as a line may form. All those things, I think you just want to be ready. They do understand that it would be better to have some kind of advance warning, and they did do that with the construction change that just came through on Friday. So they basically said, as of May 7th, construction can reopen, but they wanted to give them about a week's time to figure out how to implement all of those new changes. So I think we're going to get more notice as things start reopening in the future here, because the numbers are trending in a way where we're going to start seeing more and more things allowed. But I don't have any hard data right now. I wish I had more, and I think everybody wishes they had more, but as we go in the right direction, hopefully we will have more notice in the future so that you guys can prepare. But I think all the things we're seeing right now and all the things in the current orders are likely to be around in some version in the future. So I think the more you can prepare now to be ready, the better off you'll be when it does open.
Perfect.
Can I add to my answer on the website thing? A couple of things I thought of is, number one, your website should definitely be strong on branding, to really make sure that it carries your brand. The other thing to think about, if you do change hours, if you're registered with Google, so when people Google your name, you know how the right-hand column pops up with your hours and information. Be sure to make sure that the accurate hours, that you change them to reflect your true hours. You'll have to look at that Google description of your business again and make sure it's accurate.
Yeah, that's a great tip. I know I myself have even Googled several businesses, and I'm like, well, is this the correct time? Or, so that's a really good tip. Another question we had are, what are recommendations do you have for someone to get set up on curbside if it's something that they've never done before?
Curbside is really interesting. Number one, I know a lot of retailers are wringing their hands on, okay, how do I direct my customers to where they're supposed to park? Are they even allowed to park there? I'm wondering how the downtown Traverse City will handle that. You may have to talk with the city about freeing up some parking spots to allow for curbside delivery. Then once they park there, somehow you ideally have some signage that tells them, here's the number to call to let me know you're there. We'll come out and deliver your package. Or I know I went to Staples recently and they had a sign out saying you can walk in our store, go directly to the right to our pickup desk, or we can deliver to your car. So all of it takes, again, really good signage. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, I would, yeah, I think they're just looking for general guidance. So, yep, I think that's perfect.
Has the city figured out on how they might handle that in downtown as far as being able to park there and quickly pick up something?
It's not something that I have personally heard of yet, but that's something that we can follow up with the DDA on directly and get answers out to all of you. So that I can send a follow-up email after this once I connect with Jean Gerenzi, and I can get that answer to all of you in case that is a concern.
I wonder if any of the attendees today are downtown retailers that might know that answer.
Yeah, if anyone does know that, please feel free to comment below, and that would be really helpful.
I think something else to keep in mind to build on what Meegan said about changing your Google lookup information on your hours is make sure you put that information all over. So put it on your website, make it prominent on there, put it on your Facebook page, put it in your phone message when people call the store so that if they call and they get voicemail that it explains what your hours are and what you expect for people or what their options are to pick things up from you. Because I know that I've gotten that question from friends. I've had that question myself of, are these the right hours? Where do I go? What do I do? How do I do this? And a lot of people are going to want to know that before they get there. They're going to want to know exactly what the process is. So I think if you can explain that so they're prepared, that will be better off for them and for you.
And even just scream the fact that you're open. I know I drive by some stores right now and I go, are they open or not? You can't really tell. You can't see if their lights are on. You know, as tacky as you may think those bright red neon open signs may be, I think they're really going to be helpful now.
Oh, agreed. Yep, I definitely agree with that. And someone did say that there are a few spots blocked on Front Street for 15 minutes that allow for takeout food. And someone else said downtown has bagged meters around restaurants. So it looks like they are trying to work, you know, with downtown to make sure people can quickly park, grab something and be on their way.
That's fantastic.
That is. One thing that came up earlier that I wanted to touch on a little bit more is the face coverings and masks requirement. Because we've seen more of this pop up as this has been in place for customers to be required to wear a mask when they're out if they're medically able to do so. And I want to focus on the medically able to tolerate a mask component, because we have had some stores who've taken a very hard line in saying no, essentially no mask, no service. And you do have to accommodate those people under the ADA. There are other legal requirements. And so you could run into concerns with the law if you're not allowing those people to enter if they do have some medical reason for not wearing one. So we've also encountered folks who in other states or other communities where they've put these requirements in place that have been very strict, where, as Meegan said, people become belligerent. They don't want to be told what to do. They're going to be really adamant that they're not going to wear a mask. And then you're potentially putting yourself or your employees or other customers in danger. And so I think we have to be a little bit lenient here. You want to make it clear that that is an expectation, that if they're able to wear a mask, they should. But you don't want to put anybody in danger, and you definitely don't want to violate the ADA and put yourself subject to a lawsuit, because we are seeing attorneys saying that that would be a real problem, and that people where they've been turned away or been told that they can't enter the store without a mask because they have some reason not to, could then potentially sue you. And most of it, I think, right now is focused on larger stores. I think I saw an article about Menards over the weekend. As Meegan mentioned, they've put some really strict policies in place, and those are being questioned. So you don't want to put yourself in that position.
That's great advice, yes. Another question we had come in was, we've had great success with Facebook Live events, but I'm growing concerned about processing fees, credit cards, Shopify. Retailers could use some guidance as a means to manage costs, especially in a time like this.
We do have a blog up on our website, retailers.com, and then you click on news. And if you scroll down a bit, we have a credit card processing expert on our staff. named John Maylaban, and he does a great job on explaining how retailers can save money depending on how they take the transaction. So he has a blog up there. If you key entry your transaction, here's how you can make sure to get the lowest possible fee on that transaction. So I think he has 3 blogs up there right now. A couple are on contactless credit card acceptance as well. So check those out on our website.
Perfect. Someone did ask how can a retail store that is mainly attracted by tourism and tourists do curbside pickup? They're saying it's not easy. Do you have any tips or tricks for that?
It is difficult because you need people to come into your store and see your merchandise. I know I have a friend who owns a gallery, jewelry, gift shop store, and she can't be open right now, but she's bending over backwards. When somebody calls her up and says, I want to buy a bracelet as a graduation gift, she literally takes photos of all her bracelets and texts them to the customer. So, but logistically, how are you going to sustain that? So I'm really hoping that the governor will allow limited people to enter your store soon. But again, that's where the relationship with the customer comes in. Hopefully you know that customer, you know their tastes, they can describe for you in detail what they're looking for, and you can send at least some options to them via text or email. And it may mean doing a Facebook Live video of your store. I know some retailers have had some real success with that. I say it's probably better to do mini demonstrations that incorporate your products into the Facebook Live video rather than just holding up and then I have this and I have that. But that is one way to convey what your merchandise is. And I know a lot of retailers also are concerned about, oh my gosh, I got all the spring inventory in and I haven't been able to sell it. By the time our stores open, it will be old. Well, it's only old to your eyes. To your customers, it will all be very fresh. So I tell retailers, don't stress over that one. There are more important things to be stressed about.
Yeah, that's a great point. How do we know they have a medical reason for not wearing a mask?
So that's the trick, right? You don't. And just like with service animals where you are very limited in what questions you can ask, I would suggest that you follow the same advice for masks. I think you can ask somebody, a face covering is required to enter my store unless you are medically unable to tolerate it. And then if they say, well, I'm not able to, then you'd have to move on. You could ask something just to that very generic way of, if you're able to tolerate a mask, you need to wear a mask. And if they say that they won't, then I would assume that they have a reason that they can't and move forward. Because like I said, you don't want to put yourself into a dangerous position, and you don't want to ask a question that would violate any kind of HIPAA or ADA requirements about what that specific condition may be.
It's really a horrendous position for retailers to be in, because I've seen lots of complaints toward grocers saying, there's, several people in the store who aren't wearing masks and that puts me in danger, and they're blaming the grocery store. And I try to explain to them that it's just a really difficult position to have put retailers in to make these judgments.
And you have the same challenge with your employees too, because right now employees are required to wear them. And we've had some members who've experienced that, where they have employees who have a medical reason why they can't wear a mask or some kind of face covering, and they're not wearing one. And they've had customers come in and get very upset about that. And the one that I'm thinking in particular is actually up in the Traverse City area. And I talked to this gentleman, and what he ended up doing was he put something up on his Facebook page and his website that explained, and I think up signage in his store as well, that explained that I have some employees who are medically unable to wear one. Those who are wearing one. And this is why we're doing that. And so you have to keep people safe and keep them informed. I think like Meegan said, a lot right now is going to depend on keeping your customers and making sure that they feel safe and your employees feel safe. You want to make sure that everybody has a lot of information. They know what you're doing to keep your store clean, to keep your employees healthy, and to keep them safe when they come in. It's that they feel comfortable shopping with you. And that's going to be something that maybe the DDA can help with, maybe other partnerships of sharing information or taking some kind of maybe there's a local pledge you could sign up to take, through the chamber or the DDA, or the state may consider something like that as well, where you can say, as a business, I'm following all of these protocols to keep everybody safe who comes into my store, and then you can feel more comfortable shopping there.
Yeah, that's a great idea. That's really great. Someone also recommended to post your mask policy at the door to help curb, some of those angry customers, which is a really great recommendation. Someone else also said it's hard to distinguish open as your hours on Google listings, because people may think that they're just open in general instead of open for curbside pickup. But this might be where, as Meegan mentioned, the signage will really come in handy, and making sure your website and social media platforms are updated as well with what kind of open you are, if it is curbside. And then I see Brenda did post the website that you guys were talking about earlier for the credit card and making sure to get those fees down.
Oh, thanks.
Yes, yep, and we can follow up with an email as well. Someone did ask, if you let customers enter your store, are register shields necessary, or if everyone's wearing a mask, is that okay?
So right now, they're required for certain kinds of stores. So if you are selling food and you're a grocery store or a pharmacy, you're required to have a plexiglass shield between you and the customer at the checkout counters or common points of contact. But they're not required for other retailers right now. We're seeing a lot of people putting those in, as Meegan said, if you think that is something that you could do to help mitigate concerns, do that. She referred to it as a sneeze guard. I've heard that a lot. I don't like to refer to it as a sneeze guard because I think that sounds gross. But it is essentially that you are protecting somebody from a sneeze or a cough in most cases. No, they're not foolproof. And so just like anything, it's kind of a safety measure, but it may or may not be perfect. So it's not required for all retail right now. It's only required for some retailers. And we'll see as these things go forward if that's a requirement. What we have suggested to the governor's office is that be a recommendation if it's something that somebody's able to put in and they have the capacity to do so, but not making it a hard requirement, because we know that that's an added cost, and they might be hard to find to fit your specific store or circumstance.
And then someone also asked, for those employees who cannot wear a mask, can we encourage them to wear a face shield instead?
Yes. So really, the way that the law is written right now is it's a face covering, but it's not specific to a mask. And so we did ask that question, is a face shield sufficient? I think there's maybe some question. I think the mask is maybe the best option because it does cover more of, any potential, sound gross, spray that comes out. But a face shield that comes down and fully covers would be the next best option if they're not able to wear a mask, or if you'd rather them wear that. But it will depend, again, a lot of these things depend on local enforcement of these orders. And so you may want to check in with your local police chief, your local fire department, and see how strict they intend to be and what they think will be sufficient, because they are the ones who are tasked with enforcing the executive orders as they come through, or any local orders as well. And so you'll want to make sure that they're going to be comfortable with what measures you put in place.
Perfect. This next question is kind of a two-part. So the first part is, and this is pretty broad, but what are the biggest challenges you see with this industry returning back to work?
I think survival is the challenge right now for some retailers. Luckily retail was in a really good position going in. We do a monthly survey with the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago's Detroit branch of our member retailers and ask them to, what were their sales for the past month compared to the previous month, and what do they project as far as sales, and are they hiring, and are they increasing inventory? And the January survey was as good a January as we've had in recent memory, and February was very strong too. So of course March everybody went off the cliff, and so hopefully retailers were pretty well capitalized going into it, but Rent, all those fixed costs are a huge challenge right now. The bills are still coming in. You know, some retailers put a lot of spring inventory on credit cards, and those bills are coming due, and yet you're making no revenue. So hopefully you do have a sympathetic landlord. And by the way, there is a blog on our website on how to negotiate a rent deferral or a rent reduction. And a gentleman out of Detroit wrote it, and he's a commercial real estate expert. So he has some great tips for that. But just getting through this period and being able to really gear up your sales quickly once you can reopen.
And then the follow-up to that, which is kind of on a lighter note, is what are some of the positives to come out of this? Or, you know, are there any positives to come out of this in the way that people might be working differently, or, you know, what the future looks like after this?
Well, it now is going to force those retailers online that maybe should have been online already. You know, a lot of retailers have put it off because it is such a difficult challenge. And also just the idea of building those relationships. Amy mentioned local law enforcement. That's another relationship that you should build. I was talking to a jeweler in a Southeast Michigan town, and he was saying, oh, I've got a great relationship with my police chief. His deputy used to work in my store. They understand retail. And I said, well, you know, retailers have had, and at least in March, they had to be careful to make sure that people weren't actually turning them in for doing certain kinds of business. And he said, our police department is simply putting, if somebody does that, they put our name on a list. And if somebody asks for the list, great, but otherwise they aren't doing anything with the list. But Amy and I know of other towns where that has not been the case, and local law enforcement has been really strict with retail. So relationships, build them up. This has been a good lesson in that.
Oh, definitely. Yes. Someone did also ask a question about PPE. I just want to throw out there that on the Traverse Connect website, we did create an entirely new page with that equipment where you can find it up in Northern Michigan. So if you're having any issues, feel free to head over to Traverse Connect website, and we have a ton of resources listed there for you. But I do want to be respectful of everyone's time here. So I guess the final question I want to ask for both of you is, do you have any final words of advice? Anything going forward, any recommendations, just a final piece that you'd like to leave this group with?
Amy, go ahead.
I think that the main one is just to be prepared. This is going to be a big change. We know it's coming. We think there's a lot of things that you can do today to be ready when you're allowed to open your doors back to consumers. But I also think it's important to remember that this is going to change the way that we shop and we live and we work in the future. And so I think the message of shop local is a great one. You can talk about how there's fewer touch points when something comes from a local store. Smaller stores are smaller risk to go into. And we're going to think about tourism too, because I know that's a huge component of your economy in the Northern Michigan economies, and how people are going to be coming. When they come up now from Metro Detroit or other parts of the country, they may not be wanting to stay in a hotel downtown packed with a bunch of people. They may want to go camping. They may want to do other things. And so finding ways to entice them to come in and knowing where your customers are coming from and what they're doing, I think is going to be really important. So it's making sure that people feel safe, feel comfortable, and preparing as much as you can now while you have the time, because I know it's hard to be closed, but I would use this time and count it as a blessing so that you can figure out how to be ready when things do reopen.
And I would add, and I'm stealing this from retail expert Bob Phibbs, ooze hope. Ooze it in your messaging, in your signage, in your customer service. Hope drives our economy. It'll be better than any 70% off sale that you have.
I love it. Thank you both so much. We greatly appreciate your time and for you being here today and answering all of these questions. This was wonderful. So thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope everyone has a great day. Stay safe and stay healthy. Thanks for joining us, everyone.